Naturally beautiful places can feel untouched. The serenity that they offer is what allures him. He is searching for his own utopia. I think we all are.
There he is!
Bam.
It's Peter! I thought you'd have a paddle in your hand.
No, just in my basement. No, it doesn't really work down here. But normally, yeah, if I could be where I want to be right now, man, I would love to be paddling. But not for another few weeks for me.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. Yeah, it was great. Great seeing you. Thanks for doing the interview about your amazing film. And we'll get right into it, actually. So let's go way back in time. So what I ask this all the time, but I think it's an important question for everybody. What got you into canoeing? Like, was it a person? Was it a thing? Was it a time?
Right. A little bit of all of that. If I look back on it, it was definitely my love of fishing that pushed me to want to paddle a single blade and get into lakes where I couldn't access with a boat and stuff like that. So I grew up loving fishing so much, and my dad really helped with that. And so I fished with my dad quite a bit. My dad and I bought a boat together. And then I wanted to start getting into smaller lakes, like in the Kawartha region, stuff like that. I spent a lot of time there, and I know you're very familiar with that area. And so I bought a sports pal canoe, an aluminum canoe with a square stern on it, and I had a little 2.5 horse Mercury that I put on the back of it, and I got into some back lakes, which was phenomenal, but it just wasn't quite doing it for me. It was terrible to portage that setup, and so I was intimidated by the idea of canoeing. I was intimidated by paddling a canoe by myself. And so I started doing some research on it. And actually, like, you had some great videos on it. There's a lot of good content out there about how to paddle a canoe by yourself. And so I started watching people do it. And I was really drawn to that, the beauty of a single blade paddle gliding silently through the water, very relaxing, very ambient, and I was really drawn to that. And so the more I got researching it, the more I thought I could probably do this. I think I could do this. And so I saved up, I worked a bunch of overtime, and I bought my first canoe, which was a Novacraft Prospector 15-footer. And I took it to a local creek that the ice had just gone out. The water was pure mud and the conditions were awful, but I got in that canoe and I figured out, what do you call it? The goon stroke, I think is what it is. It's not the J stroke, but it's the goon, right? And what I figured I could do that. And I was just in love with it. And maybe 6 months to a year later of paddling, I finally learned how to J stroke. And from there, I mean, it's just bliss. It's pure bliss. And so now I don't really even go on the boat anymore. And I want a canoe everywhere. And solo paddling is one of my favorite things in the world. So it was my love of fishing, I think, that ultimately got me into it. And then different content creators like yourself who taught me how to solo paddle a canoe. And then the sense of adventure was really born of, wanting to do rivers from beginning to end, unknown routes and crown land, stuff like that. So, yeah, that's what got me into it.
Well, cheers on that. This is a Whisky Fireside Chat, and it's 9:30 in the morning. I'm trying this. I have a wee bit, but I think I'll just have more of the tea than this. But well, you never know. You never know. I got so many questions for you. One thing that's really interesting. I sent the film to a bunch of buddies of mine, a lot of film producers too, actually, that I know in the field, and asked them to look at it last night. They all did, and the one person said they did the entire French and didn't fish.
True. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's the thing. It just didn't. So I've fished on the French plenty, and we've done it. So when we did the north to south film, and so that was in the fall, and we actually tried fishing, but we didn't really film any of it. We just didn't have time with all the filming and whatnot. And then when we did the Canoeist, the first half of that is entirely on the French, and so David's not a huge fisherman, and And we didn't have time because there were so many things that we needed to accomplish that it just wasn't in the schedule to do. But I fished on the French plenty and had some great success there for sure. And so, yeah, I know it's like, it blows people's minds. Like, you're a fisherman and you didn't fish and you were there, but it's like, trust me, I have fished it. Right. But just not during those times where the workload was pretty intense to get done what we wanted to get done. So,
well, yeah. that goes to the second question I had for you is, so you've gone out there a lot. You're inspired by being out there. Why film it? What was all of a sudden the epiphany? I want to film this and share it with the world.
Right. So, I used to have that mentality, especially like when I got into paddling and exploring. The first solo trip that I did was in Temagami, and the Donald, Wolf Lake, Matagassy Loop, all that. Absolutely phenomenal, beautiful route, very popular nowadays. But I went out there with the idea of filming all of that, and because people were doing it at the time. Now YouTube is quite saturated with that type of content, and so at the time, I wanted to capture not only my experiences for my own personal, I suppose, looking back on it, right, in the future to be able to relive all of that stuff, but I wanted to try and capture what I was feeling out there. I wanted to try and capture the emotions that I was experiencing, the highs and the lows and that kind of stuff. And not only the beauty of the surroundings and the misadventures, the good and the bad of it, but I wanted to show what I was experiencing out there from my own perspective and what I was feeling. Because I didn't feel like a lot of content at the time really captured the emotion behind canoeing or why we do it.
He rises early, and he can't believe what he is seeing. A morning like this is special, precious. He will savor this the best way that he knows how, by gliding through the mist in his beloved canoe.
What we experience, in our hearts and our minds when we're out there. And so I wanted to try and display that. And so the series I did in Temagami called 8 Days Alone was my first ever attempt at something like that. And nowadays, when I go out there, it's actually rare that I have my cameras. And I only go out there to film when it's for a dedicated project. And so the Canoeist, for example, that was an entire trip planned to just make this film. And it wasn't, just going out there and happened to turn on the cameras here and there. Everything was very intentional to get certain shots and tell a certain story. So I don't do, I guess I've done tons of trips now, which have all been phenomenal. And it's rare that I bring the cameras anymore because I just want to film for certain projects and stuff now. But at the time it would have been to capture the emotion behind what I was experiencing and share it with whoever wanted to watch it at the time. So, yeah.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you the third question I wrote down. I never followed the script. But
sure. No worries.
I was going to ask you why the French River, and I think we already know the answer. I mean, it's a historic river, it's a scenic river, but you filmed it before. You did that big trip, really great film, actually. Your finest, actually, is when you went from the very beginning to the end with your buddy.
Many people will paddle small sections of this river in a given year, but very few will actually paddle the entire length, let alone film it and tell their story.
But then you went back to the same sort of stage.
Mm-hmm.
Why so?
That's right. Yeah. So I wanted, North to South was that documentary about the river, and we began on Lake Nipissing, went all the way to Georgian Bay. And for us, that was the biggest trip we had ever done at the time. We've done some that are quite a bit bigger than that by now. But I realized at the time just how, my goodness, what a beautiful location. Absolutely spectacular in terms of visually, like, stunning, right? And so, and all sections and varied from the Nipissing section, so underrated, and I mean, absolutely gorgeous. And in the different sections of the river as well. I knew going into the Canoeist that that's where I wanted to film from a visual standpoint, because I knew whoever chose to watch this film, they probably are going to recognize some spots. And I wanted that. I wanted people to be able to relate to it and say, oh, I've been there. It's kind of cool. This was filmed there, right? And So yeah, I wanted that landscape 100%. And I don't think there's a better place to film for something like this than the French River. And when people all over the world, like, so let's say like paddlers in the UK, for example, I communicate with quite a few of those people, and when they picture a Canadian canoeing scene, that's 100% where they're thinking. They're imagining the rocks and, you know, the Georgian Bay vista and all of that, and the many islands and the trees. That's what they're thinking of. And so I thought, what better place to film than the French River in the Georgian Bay area. So yeah.
Well, I'm jumping ahead with questions here or whatever, but what you're saying is actually going through my head. I sent the film to a bunch of friends last night, and one really famous filmmaker, Kip Spidell, a good friend of mine, he looked at it and he said, "Ask him this question." Okay. So this is a really renowned filmmaker that's been filming in nature for many years. Who is this film for? He wanted me to ask you that.
Wow. Oh boy. I wanted it to be for people who paddle to escape what's going on, to relax, to forget the chaos of life. People like me who paddle for solitude and peace and tranquility. I didn't do this for, you know, people who paddle for adrenaline or excitement, that kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I did it because I want it to be for people to be able to escape reality and see the beauty of nature for what it truly is. And I did my best to capture that. And so I know it's not for a massive audience, but the people that have seen it so far definitely understand what I was going for and have let me know that, you know, this is a message of hope and peace, and wow, this was a tranquil experience. And that's who I was going for, is people who paddle to, I guess, escape the stresses of life and to experience peace. That's who I was trying to reach.
He has been paddling here for the last 20 years of his life, and yet the creativity and genius found in the design of the rocks, the trees, the water, the wildlife, it all still fascinates him.
Okay, great. Why David Lee? Why were you not in the film? So do you know David? Sorry, I'll let you answer that question. But
Right. So I had followed David's stuff. He's taken a break from YouTube in the last few years, but at the time he was putting out content quite a bit. And so I was drawn to what he was doing, because he was doing some pretty fantastic trips, right? Where unknown canoe routes like slogs and carving out routes that hadn't been done and stuff like that. And so I was really drawn to that. And so I started commenting on his stuff, and I could see, like, this guy's pro. I mean, his whitewater skill, everything. He's a very skilled paddler. And so I was just drawn to his stuff, and I started commenting on it, and he would reply. And then when I started putting out content, he started commenting on my stuff. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, holy crap, David Lee's commenting on my stuff. You know, I felt pretty starstruck, and as I was a big fan. And so we went beyond YouTube comments back and forth, and we exchanged some contact info, and we just started chatting just as a couple of enthusiastic paddlers. And it turned into a friendship. And when I got the idea for the Canoeist, I knew that I needed to be the one filming it. I wanted to be the one behind the camera. I wanted to be the one getting the shots from my perspective, because I know people will do a phenomenal job of it, but I wanted it to be through my own eyes. And I thought, I want to film somebody and tell someone's story. And so I just pictured David as being the one doing it because of his professionalism. I knew that he would be enthusiastic about doing the project, which he was. And I also needed someone who was willing to, you know, do things a bunch of times, you know, like run rapids 3 times kind of thing, and get it from different angles and all that stuff. Right. So, and he was just so great about all of it. And he was excited about the project. And so it needed to be someone that I got along with, someone who was willing to do what needed to be done multiple times, and someone who wouldn't complain or anything like that. Right. And he never did once. And so So that's why I chose David. And what's interesting is through the story, we went into it not completely scripted or anything like that. And I knew that as the trip would go on and we would film in the different locations that we had discussed, that I was either going to have a story unfold from the trip, or I would come out with a story that's more personal. And as I got to know David through that trip, I decided to make this a little more about David's personal life and tell the story of why he chose to get into canoeing. And he has reasons that are very similar to mine and would be very similar to a lot of people. And so that was where the story about David became more personal. So there was multiple reasons why I chose David Lee, and I would choose him again in a heartbeat, because he's a fantastic dude, and we've gotten to be great friends as a result of all this. We're going to be doing a trip together in Quebec in September, a big whitewater trip. So I'm pretty stoked for that.
That's cool. That's cool. So here's the big question I want to ask you, and I think a lot of people that watch, I know my friends that watched it had the same question. You went from a first person to third, and so it's all about the canoeists. So we don't know David. David could be Bill Mason. He could be John Smith. It didn't matter. It could be us. Yeah. That was the thing. I'm watching this film. I know. Okay, well, I get the canoeist, because it could be anybody. But then about 3/4 way through, you get into his personal life and it becomes a different. I mean, I'm a writer. So if I was reading a book, I'd be like, what the?
His name is David. And as his journey in this place continues, he relives the highs and the lows of his life.
Like all of a sudden I'm going from one genre to the other. What made that flip? Why did you do that?
Right. And that's a fantastic question. And I guess I don't really have an exact answer, other than the first half, where it's told from the narrative of the canoeist. We don't know his name. We don't really know any of his info. I wanted that to be encompassing everyone. And we are all the canoeists. We all have our reasons. We can all see ourselves in the canoeist paddling along there. And so I wanted also to make it more personal. And so I just had to do it. I just had to flip a switch. And there's a reason why there's 2 chapters in the Canoeist. Well, there's kind of 3. There's the introduction, and then there's chapter 1, Salt of the Earth. And then there's chapter 2, which is In Search of Goshen. And in chapter 2 is where it makes that switch. And there's a reason why I did chapter 1 and chapter 2. And it's because chapter 1 is in that narrative of the canoeist encompassing everybody. And chapter 2 is where it switches to his personal story. And I start saying his name and show pictures of him when he was a child with his family. And I thought, if people can see themselves in the first half, I think even more so people can relate to his story in the second half if we make it personal. And I think it's worked, because just the way that people have responded to it. I think they appreciated the personal story of David, because he does have quite a few people that follow him, and they are actually, so responsive on David's willingness to share his personal story. And they appreciate that. Like, they get to know him so much more than they thought they already did. So that was why there was 2 chapters. And yeah, I guess that's why I wanted to switch it from that narrative from the canoeist to David personally. So
did that happen in the edit, or when you were actually on the trip, that switch?
So the idea unfolded as we were on the trip. It was as we were talking more and more that I started thinking it could be really cool to tell David's own story through this. I had other ideas of telling my own story and having David act through it. But as we got talking, it just made more sense to tell David's story through it. And so the idea came about through discussion while on the trip and just filming everything that we could. And then afterwards, through much discussion and communication back and forth, I figured out that this is going to work. It's going to work really well. And David's willing to, even share pictures and tell very, personal details of his story and whatnot. And everything that he was going through with his mom's health, right? And his mother was such a pivotal influence in his life. She raised their family after his dad passed away. Excuse me. he was, the reason why he would have been paddling in those days was because of the stresses of dealing with that and the potential of her, passing away really anytime. And so I wanted to capture that because people live that every day, and people experience loss and grief, daily. And canoeing and paddling is a way that people can cope with that. And I wanted to show that in the Canoeist as well. And so it all made sense as we were, after the trip was done, it all made sense to really, it all came together. And I just made it work with everything that we had filmed. And so, yeah.
Now at the end of the film, it's dedicated, I'm guessing, to his mother? Because
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So in 2023, did she pass away?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. She passed away. And so it was actually at David's request that the film be dedicated to her memory. And so that's what we did. And it was a loss that he had experienced. And it goes, the film doesn't mention this or anything like that, but it was just a couple of years after David's mom passed away that my dad suddenly passed away. And so I again could see, and I've gone paddling to cope with that. And so all the more it made sense to do it like that. And so, yeah.
Are you a fan of Cedar House's filming? Because it had a little dash of that in it.
Right. I've been removed from a lot of content for quite a while, but he actually reached out through a comment and said some really kind words. And years ago, I was watching so much more stuff. I guess I haven't watched a whole lot in a few years, but I remember being really drawn to Cedar House's content a few years ago. And so, his I know he's a very talented filmmaker for sure, and seems like a very kind person.
Oh yeah, he is. Great guy. I guess what I'm getting at too, there's a little dash and little sprinkle of spirituality, even religion in it.
In our deepest times of weakness is when we must search the hardest for our greatest source of strength.
Do you think people are actually noticing that? Because Bill Mason in Water Walker, he mentioned that as well.
In our culture, it's really tough to talk about spiritual things. You know the feeling, like, oh no, here comes the sermon. And no matter what I say, I can't win. Because my church crowd will feel I didn't say enough, and my canoe cronies will say, well, we enjoyed the picture, but we could have done without the sermon. So what are you going to do?
Did you get that idea from Bill's film Water Walker? Like he basically said, nobody's going to listen to me if I talk about religion, but I'm going to.
Yeah. I did. And I'm a huge Bill Mason fan, right? He's so influential in everything, and all the canoeing content that is created now came from what he started and what he did, in my opinion, and highly influential in his innovation and his vision and everything that he created. Highly influential. And so I'm a huge fan of what he did. And I'm a huge fan of the way that he brought in his faith, his personal beliefs into what he created, because he never shoved it down anyone's throat, right? He would gently present it in a way that he was being true to who he was as a person.
There's a beautiful piece in Job that says, ask the animals and they'll teach you, or the birds of the air and they'll tell you. Or speak to the earth, and it will teach you. Or let the fish of the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature, and the breath of all mankind. I really like that.
And I really admired that. And so I like making stuff more personal because, well, for one, I'm making it and I'm editing it. And so it just makes it more enjoyable for me when I make it true to myself. And so I wanted it to show a bit of my personal, my personal spirituality. And David's as well. And so we were united in that view. And so why not have some of it sprinkled in there? And I like it because it creates a bit of a deeper thinking than just canoeing, that it can go beyond that. And so, it was absolutely influenced by Bill Mason's Water Walker, 100%. So yeah, one of my favorite films of all time.
You know, the cool thing, I've done the French, I don't know how many times, I've written about it multiple times. I've never seen that cross.
Blending into the rock wall, almost hidden, a familiar symbol catches his eye. The symbol that he now sees for the second time on this trip.
Right. Yeah.
I was, where is that?
Yeah, I know. It's not quite on the French. You got to venture a bit to the, oh my goodness, to the northwest. But anyways, it's in a spot that it's interesting. I did a talk with Tim and Pamela from Super Good Camping podcast and recently, and they were asking about like, you know, locations and stuff like that. So the first half is filmed, you know, on the French. It's pretty easy to spot blue chute and all that. But the rest, there's 2 different locations that we used in the second half, and not quite on the French. And Tim asked, like, so can you tell us where? And this is where that cross is. And I said, well, I can't really tell you specifically because it's a spot that I kind of want to keep to ourselves, just because we like going there and we like it quiet and whatnot. So I don't want to tell you, like, give GPS coordinates to where it is, but it's not too far. And with some good satellite research, it wouldn't be too hard to find, I guess, if people were devoted to that. But we stumbled upon that cross completely by accident. I had been there scouting locations a few weeks before, doing a trip with my cousin James. And we just stumbled upon that cross, and like, oh, that's amazing, right? And so I knew this was a location that I wanted to bring Bill and David to film the Canoeist, and so I thought it'd be really cool to film a sequence there. So yeah, it worked out pretty cool. It's a pretty neat spot there for sure.
Maybe the cross found you, man. Talking about Bill, is that your brother?
So I call him my brother, but he's actually my cousin, and okay. So. He's the brother I never had. I'll refer to it like that. So I think I've called him Brother Bill in different projects, and he's like my brother, but technically we're first cousins. But we've done a ton of trips together now, and we finished the whole Mississippi River, and just last year, and that's the next documentary is about the Mississippi River. So pretty cool.
So your other brother, whatever. So was he the camera person, and you were the producer, or?
Right. It was mostly me behind the camera. Bill did some, but mostly Bill's job in the Canoeist was, as I would describe, as lead hand. So everything that had to happen with being out there canoeing and camping, Bill would take care of, so that I could be with David just doing filming. Bill would get camp set up. Bill would get the fire going. Bill would start a meal. Bill would, get our sleeping pads down, put a tarp up, whatever you name it, he would do. And when he was done all that, he would come and, have another camera along for another angle, or we would look at shots together, and he would give me his opinion on, well, try a different angle, try this, or, change the lighting, whatever. And so I couldn't have done it without him. I mean, no way at all. So yeah, I don't know what the technical name for that job is, but I called it lead hand, and I think it sounds cool, and it describes pretty accurately what he did.
He's a good friend is what I call him.
Oh man, yeah. Couldn't have a better one, honestly. Couldn't have a better one.
Thinking about that on trip when you're filming, what moment was you were just like, why am I doing this? You're so frustrated. I don't know if you were, but I didn't get the shot, and the dinner wasn't all that great, whatever. And right. Was there a moment where like, why am I doing this? So why?
Wow. When we were out there wasn't any of that. It was, we had the absolute greatest conditions possible. I mean, so like the mist sequence that happened that morning was, completely unexpected. We don't know what we're going to encounter when we go out there. And we had the greatest conditions. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was beautiful. And so there was I honestly had no moments of questioning, why am I doing this? The moments of questioning came later, because through the editing process and whatnot, because So much happened. And so a lot of people don't know this, but that was filmed. We filmed The Canoeist in September of 2021. So it's going back a long time, right? So much happened in life with me. I know, with me, with David, that it took a long time to get this one done. And there was a point where I was so frustrated with, I'm feeling so far removed from it, feeling so far removed from editing, that I almost wanted to give this up completely. And personally in life, so much stuff happening too that just took me away from it. And it was my motivation to finish it was that I wanted David to see it, and I felt like I owed this to David to do and finish, because he gave so much to do this with me. And so that got me, like, got the fire under my butt, so to speak, right? And then I got into it, and like, this really does work, and this really could be something special. And when it came together and was finally done, David had been so far removed from it too, that he was nervous to see it, and was like, oh boy, it's going to be me. That's the actor. What's that going to be like? Right. But he loved it. And, so it was absolutely worth it. It was 100% worth it, but man, it was a trial to get it done, because of how complex it was to edit. But also just with life, because we're human beings, and things happen that take us away from our passions. And so, it took a long time. And so that was the frustrating part, was the editing and the years that followed. But now, 5 years later, I look back on it, and I'm like, I'm so glad that I finished this thing, for sure.
Wow. 5 years. Like, you're talking to some hyper person that writes a blog for Explorer every single week for the last 25 years, right?
Yeah.
I do a video, and I get home and I edit it through the night and put it out in the morning. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying that's a negative thing. And I was actually going to ask you whatever happened to the Grey Owl film, but now I know it's still in your head probably, and you're still working on it.
Well, there's a lot more to the Grey Owl film, and I would speak to this because I do have people that ask me that.
In the early 1930s, Archie Bellany, more commonly known as Grey Owl, wrote these words. A deep, slow-flowing river, silent, smooth as molten glass. On either bank of forest, dark, shadowy, and mysterious. The face of nature as it was since the beginning. All creation down the eons of unmeasured time, brooding in ineffable calm, infinite majesty, and a breathless and unutterable silence.
The Grey Owl Project. So that's a film that I put a little trailer out for. It's called Absolution. And absolution, the meaning of that word is forgiveness. And so what a lot of people don't realize about Grey Owl is he's such a polarizing figure, right? He did so much good, and he deceived thousands of people while, living a life as an imposter, basically. And he did very much accomplish a lot of good. So he's such a polarizing figure. People love him or people hate him. And what a lot of people don't realize is the issues that were going on in his own life, that addiction, for example. I'm just gonna say this because this is an issue that's still so relevant today and will be relevant 100 years from now. As long as humanity exists, addiction will be a relevant issue. And addiction was a huge factor in Archie Bellany, Grey Owl's life. And so this film, again, when I get to it, it needs to be something that I have nothing else on my plate, and it needs to be something that is done perfectly, because this is something that's very personal to me. With the person that I used to be and to the person that I am now is extremely different. It's night and day. And so I wanted to tell my own story through Grey Owl's story. And so that's something that is deeply personal, and I want it to be done really, really well. And even when I do get to it, which I will get to, that footage from our canoe trip might be 10 years old, but the issue of addiction is always relevant. And so I'm waiting for that to just be the right time, and to get a few other projects off of my slate first, and then tackle the hard one for sure.
Good answer. Good answer. Oh my Lord, man! I didn't even keep to the script at all. One more question, because we got like only 4 minutes left here. What's next? Well, obviously, you know, I'm not going to ask that question. That's what I usually ask. What's next? What's the film itself? Was there any disappointment when it came out? Was there any like, oh man, I should have done this. I should have done this. And I'm pretty sure you're a deep thinker, because if you're looking at the film, it's very soft voice narrative. It's very old fashioned narrative. It's like way Bill Mason stuff, right? Except you're not Bill Mason, Dave is. Was there any second guessing when it came out? Because 5 years of working on it.
Yeah. Man, no, there's not. I think if anything, I would just make more content like this, even though it doesn't draw a massive audience. But the people that it does draw, they relate to, they understand, they get it, and I get it, and I want to do more stuff like this. It doesn't mean I'm not going to do more stuff, documentaries in the future. I'm working on one right now, and so yeah, I would do more stuff like this. And no regrets on it. No regrets at all. Only that I would have gotten it out sooner, but I do believe that everything happens in the right time. And so if it took 5 years to do, then it took 5 years, and there's a reason why it took that long. And I had to get to a point where I was in a good enough place to be able to finish it, and David too. And so it took that long. And so that's just the way it is. But no regrets at all.
Fantastic. Cheers to you, sir. Name of the film is
The Canoeist,
and you can find it at
Latitudes Wilderness Films on YouTube,
and a bunch of other good stuff too.
You bet.
Great. Fantastic. Cheers.
Cheers.